Hey friends, it's
Hello.
Thursday.
Happy Thursday.
It's darker here. We've had
It's-
lots of snow and ice.
It's been very cold, but we're looking forward to chatting with Erika tonight. This is going to be the last Making Comfort and Joy for a little while. So
Yeah,
we're just gonna. This is kind of the end cap to our.
for a little time being.
Yeah. So let me just. I see Erika. So hold on. Let's just see.
Hello.
Hi.
Let me move this camera back. I'm like so close. Ooh,
That's okay.
okay. Well, we'll just keep it there because I don't want to mess anything up.
Love it.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you both?
Good.
It's wonderful
Good.
to see you.
That's great. Yes, it's good to see you too.
We are twinning, and
Oh.
we're twinning.
Oh, I love that. I love those so much. That is like my favorite print of all time. I love it.
We love this bag so much.
Mhm.
And I don't know, this is maybe my favorite part is the leather pocket.
The side pocket. Yeah,
I know.
I was like sewing one day and I'm like, what if these had like just a little pocket that you could just slip, some scissors into, and there you go. Those were born.
So wonderful.
I just did like it was a little time capsule for me. Well, most of my projects are, but I pulled this out and was like, oh, there's my knitting from then. And I looked and I was like, there's my card from when I was at the doctor's office last, being pregnant. I had it with me. So it's kind of fun of
So
like
sweet.
going through and finding those things to take you back there.
I know. I'm always finding stuff in my bag. So yeah, you're like, wait, I didn't remember that happened. And then
Right?
you see a receipt from somewhere, or,
Yeah. And you think, oh, it hasn't been that long since I've worked on that piece. And then you're like, oh, July of last year. Got it. Tell everyone a little bit about how you got started. Well, actually, the first thing is
okay.
tell us about the name.
Yes.
Tell us about Paisley and Gold.
Oh my goodness. So I'll tell you about how I started, and then because I did not have a name for a while.
Okay.
So when I was in college, I went to school in a very small town in Georgia, and I was bored. And I was like, I have to do. I know college and bored, but you never hear those in the same sentence. But I was extremely bored. And I was like, I need to do something. And so I had a couch. I had like a little futon. And I was like, it needs like some like covers, like the pillows need some covers or something. And so I went to Joann's and I got me a yard of fabric and some hand sewing needles. And I hand sewed me some pillow covers. Yes. And that was my first, and this was in 2016.
Sure.
So that was my first time ever sewing anything.
What?
And so I really love the covers. And I was like, I could totally, don't you, like you think, oh, I can monetize this. And so I was like, I'm going to sell these. And so I started making tons of them by hand, like just sewing every single, and I'm talking like 20 inches by 20 inches pillow covers. So it would take so much time.
Do you still have
Do you have any?
Yes, I have. I wish I had brought. I have tons of them. But yeah, one day I'll send you guys a picture, and you'll be like, "What? You were hand?" Yes, I was hand sewing those. And so I was just like, I should monetize this. And so I started making a ton, and I started selling them at a local in Georgia, a local like craft fair.
Okay.
And at that time I was like so scared of sewing machines. And I did not have a name. I was just going by like Erika Creations or something like that. And I was like, I should get me a sewing machine. So I'll call up my parents. And because I have no money,
Sure.
I'm like, calling my parents. I'm like, could you guys like help me out with like a sewing machine? And they're like, out of all things you would call to ask for a sewing machine. And so I was like, yes, I really want one. And so they sent me like $50. I got like a Singer Start. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's the smallest Singer sewing machine available to the general public. And so it's very tiny.
Yep.
Yeah. And so I got that. And I went back and I started sewing all these things up. And then I was like, I should move on to something else. Like, I was like, these aren't just working. Nobody was buying them. I really had no platform. I had nothing going on. And then I went on YouTube and I started watching videos of people putting zippers into pillow covers. And I'm like, well, what if I like made like a pouch or something with this zipper? Because I learned this new technique. I was like, what if I started using zippers to make pouches and things like that? So I made my very first pouch on my sewing machine. And so I started making tons of pouches. I put them on my college's like bulletin board, and I'd be like, $5 pouches. $5 pouches, yes. I was like, $5 pouches, you know, they come in all these different colors. So I would just go get like, yeah, I would just go get like all the fabric from Joann that I could afford.
Sure.
And you know, after a while, I was like, so after a while, I was like, I could totally make this like a real business. And so when I was in school, every single summer, I would go visit my grandmother. She lives in Detroit, so 4 hours from you, but still in Michigan.
Exactly.
And she was like, you should come up with a name. And so I'm like, well, I don't really know what I would, you know, Erika Creations is okay. Or I think I might have it like Erika Marie, because it's my middle name, Creations or something. And so we were just sitting there. We would just throwing all these names out, all these things. And at the time, I had this Paisley print fabric that I used for everything. I used it for the pillow covers. I used it for my zipper pouches. And I was like, what about like Paisley and something? And she was like, okay. And so I was like, what about? And so I went to my mom. Like, Paisley what? And so I went to my mom, and she's actually the one that suggested Paisley in gold, because this print did have like some gold flecks in it. And so I went on to Instagram, and the name was totally free, but I did not, like, it was available, but I did not make an account or anything, like, till probably like 5 months later. And so when I went back on Instagram, the name was gone. But I was like, I'm going to keep Paisley in gold, and I'm going to add sewing to it. And that's what it's going to be. So that's where the name comes from. Just like me looking at a fabric print.
Love it.
Love it.
Love it.
Yeah.
That befuddled, like, so I was like thinking she was going to tell me that like her family sews, or
No.
you just were like doing it.
No, this was all YouTube, sitting down, like, you know, trial and error. That's how I learned how to sew. I did not take a class because I could not afford to take a class.
Sure.
And yeah, so
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Well,
it's very exciting. I love my little story.
Well, and then okay, so even still, okay, so from not knowing how to sew, like sewing by hand, and then teaching yourself on a machine, but then like next level here, because these are like industrial zippers. Leather is not something that you can just sew on a machine that you just like walk into a store and just get basic level. So tell us about like the progression, and also I'm super interested in not to divulge any secrets of yours where you find things, but also like then did you get into the like, okay, well, I'm going to now source leather. How did that come about? Like,
it was definitely, I had some very, like hard times trying to figure out how to scale and then what to get when I scale. And so what kind of happened was, I think I was on Instagram, and I would see these bag makers that were making the most beautiful wax canvas totes and backpacks, and my imagination went wild. And from like a very young age, I would take things apart and I would put them back together again. And I probably would have been a phenomenal engineer if I could do math.
You are doing math.
Yeah, if I could do math.
Yeah, you're doing it.
Oh, well, it's a lot of math required in sewing. And so it was just a lot of trial and error. I would take any money that I would get, like whether it was like a refund from my school and my scholarships. I would take anything just to like buy a square foot of leather. I'm talking like very tiny piece, just to see if my machine could sew through it. And if it didn't, I was like, okay, we need to see what machine will do that. And so I took any money I had, any money that I was making from I call it P&G, by the way. So
Sure.
yeah, P&G. Any money that I was making from P&G, and I would buy things. And I know that's like not the best way to do things, just spending your money to kind of figure out like this hobby, but I really wanted to figure out how can I be a leather worker. And there are not a lot of women of color in leather work, and so I didn't really see or have anyone that I saw on Instagram that I felt comfortable even reaching out to, because I was like, will it be perceived well? Will they feel like I'm like, trying to like, steal from them?
Right.
Excuse me. Or, it was kind of scary. And so I was told, YouTube is your friend. And so I would just go on YouTube and I watch these leather workers, and I would write down the tools that I needed. And I would either go to like Tandy, which is like a local store you can just walk into, instead of, it's Tandy Leather. You could just walk into and get some like basic supplies. And so I would go in there and I would talk to the men in there, and I'd be like, I'm trying to make this. Like, what do you think I should get? And they are very helpful. Like in every Tandy store I've ever been in, they are very helpful. So if anyone is looking to start leather work, I highly recommend like going in there and not being afraid to ask them questions. And so it was just a lot of trial and error, a lot of spending my own pocket money. Like I would have times where friends would go on trips, and I would be like, and I'm like 18, 19 years old, and I'm like, no, I have to figure this out. I really want to make this. I remember making my first drop kit. I gave it to my grandfather for Christmas, and he was like, how in the world? And I'm like, YouTube. And like, like YouTube, like I watched a YouTube video and I figured out how to put a zipper in and to do the corners and the gussets and all this stuff. And that is how it's been this entire time. Me trying something, it not working out maybe, and me doing it again and again and again and again. And I'm just, my grandmother's just like, I'm in awe because nobody taught you how to do any of this stuff. And I'm like, I would do it over the exact same way if I could, because just like the knowledge of knowing that you taught yourself something, or that you really, kind of got through your issues of trying to figure something out or whatever. And so, yeah, I'm very just happy about the way everything has gone. And I love that you are carrying your drop kits, and that makes me so happy.
Well, and so it reminds me too, like when you're saying this, it reminds me of like when I was getting into dyeing, or I'm sure like when you were getting into the yarn shop, like when you're getting ready to like become like, I'm gonna be a maker. When that first, before you even know I want to be a maker, you have this like fire going on inside you that like, this is exciting, it's intoxicating. I'm going to devote every spare moment to it, my evenings and my weekends. And like you said, any dollar, like instead of being like, I could take out a credit, like you don't even think of that. You're just like, no, I need money. I'm going to spend it on the thing I love. And again, the YouTube, how much things I've learned from YouTube, and like how anytime someone's like, how do you do that? I was like, to look on YouTube, like it is so great that it's like, look at how we do all these things.
I know it. I love it. I love how we can go from not knowing something, and then we can go online, and it's all this information. And what I really want to do in the future is I kind of want to be a resource for people, just like somebody else was a resource for me, And so I don't even know where to start, but it is something I definitely want to do.
Oh, that's cool.
I have a feeling that your friend and ours, Tony, might be able to help you in the direction of like tutorials and helping you to establish that part, if that's video tutorials, because I mean I don't have to tell you what a brilliant, awesome, wonderful genius that she is. So,
and like we were even talking last week with Felicia, just again that excitement of learning new things all the time and wanting to have a platform to be able to share that, or like getting to, I like I'm hearing about that more of like with makers, instead of being like, I'm so excited to make, it's even like, I'm so excited to teach. And that's a pretty cool thing to kind of suddenly start hearing that,
and to be that resource for someone else to so that they know where to start, and to not be so intimidated, and to not know where to go.
Exactly.
And
like you were saying, you were feeling intimidated to go reach out. So
Oh yeah.
That would be really, that's pretty inspiring.
Oh,
Especially
yeah.
if you know where people who feel like that already, you know exactly where to make it feel easier, to not feel people will be intimidated to come to you. You know how to make it feel welcoming and open because you want that for them.
Exactly. And so, yeah, that's definitely a goal of mine. It's just like, I have a hard time like figuring out where to start with things. I run like head first into it, and I'm like, wait a minute, you should have probably started a little bit back, try to figure that out a little bit more before you fully get into it. But Tony, we have had so many conversations about me getting into like teaching and my patterns and all those things. And she is just amazing. Like everything she puts out. And she has been like a credible friend and mentor to me. And yes, she is fabulous when it comes to figuring out how to get into teaching and patterns and all of that.
Yeah, that's right. I didn't even think of that piece, the pattern piece that you'll.
Yeah. Because I design all of my bags. So I'm like, why not, I would even make my Dop Kit pattern free because there are so many different ways that you can make one. And I feel like I have kind of found like a really simple way to just get it done, in a short amount of time. And I would love to, get into that. But it's kind of like fear halfway. And then, just where do I start? Yeah.
Course. And I think that
and it's a healthy, but I think it's also like a healthy thing too. Like you have a big aspirated goal, and then it's also be like, okay, so like I know that I can't just jump in and go, oh, now I did it wrong, but just kind of think it's good having both of those pieces of really, really overexcited to do something big, and then have a little fear to ground before you take those steps.
Yes.
And I think that it's like, I think the idea of selling your patterns, and we talked about this earlier this week, but I think that selling your patterns, if you are willing to do it, that's a huge, super open. There are a lot of people that make bags, and they're just not even bags, just everything in general.
Any dresses, designs.
And there are a lot of people that like when they've created something, they kind of want to, and you understand why this exists, but people want to hold on really tightly to like this thing that they've created, and they like proprietary information. And I think that like, okay, to a degree, some of that stuff, of course, if you've taken the time to do it, it is your baby. You have created this out of nothing, and it's but it's also another level of it's two-sided where you're open to, okay, I want other people to like, you couldn't possibly sew all of the Dop Kits that everyone would want. And so somebody else may want to, while business-wise, being able to create some sort of additional revenue for yourself. Yeah. Because of the fact that like people are paying you as a fee, as a professional, which you are, for this thing that they've, and I
like seeing it's like two different, you've just opened yourself up to two large different groups, where I will never sew because I'm awful at sewing, but I'm so glad I get to buy.
No, nobody's awful at sewing. No. Let's not say that.
Right. But but other people are just like, who are really lovely, amazing makers with their hands that are like, I want to make my own, and it's so great to be able to just like really open up instead of just having only retail. You get a bigger community of things. And I love it.
Yeah, it's really, it's something that I'm like, it's like a whole nother, side of also like Instagram. Like when you get into the people who are making their entire wardrobes, down to bags and all of their accessories. It's just like, it will open up, like it would be an entirely new community of people. And I've written about 6 patterns, and they're just sitting on my laptop. Like, so what are we gonna do? And I want to share them with everyone because you can't. Okay, imagine if everyone that ever came up with anything or had any idea just kept it like to themselves and didn't share it with people. Right? We wouldn't know how to do any of these like serious equations or, you know, all these different things that we wouldn't be able to do because somebody just kept everything to themselves.
Right.
Like, no, we don't gatekeep. I would love to,
Yes.
you know, absolutely share my patterns, my thoughts. And I've even, like, in my patterns written out instructions for, you know, if you want to make a different variation of it, or, you know, just like to help people kind of figure that out. But yes,
and
it
it's
is something I
probably
definitely would do.
would be so cool to see also thousands of people making that bag and being like, I would have never imagined.
I know, that would be so
Yes.
exciting. I would love that.
Yes,
That would be so exciting.
and then, you know, obviously, like, then there's another way that you could put yourself out there too, where you don't even have to do, like, I mean, then you could even next level if you want to,
Mm-hmm.
you know, get into wholesale and selling your patterns at
Mm-hmm.
fabric stores, you
I
know,
love
so
that.
you don't just, so yes, of course, you've got the ability to do digital PDFs,
Mm-hmm.
full retail price on your website that anyone can get to you.
Right.
And but then also we have found this, even though, you know, social is a major part of what we do,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, and we're tapped into it because of a particular generation. I'm 40. I feel like, okay, well, then there's a whole subset of people that are older,
Mm-hmm.
that don't have access to, or they're just not into doing
Yeah.
digitally.
Mm-hmm.
They only partake in brick and mortar sorts
Mm-hmm.
of stores, and so then you're getting in front of a new audience.
Mm-hmm.
It's some is same crossover, and some is entirely new. So
And even kind of like as we're talking, as like we're getting really excited and ramping up and going into like, you can do everything.
I know.
That idea of like we like that pace and how do you like
Mm-hmm.
figure out how to, like, you know,
because that's
chill.
something that we talked about before too. Whereas like, okay, instead of always say monetizing everything that our hands ever touch, which
Mm-hmm.
we are super guilty
Mhm.
of that.
I
And
physically don't know
how
how to, like, like that's why my body has gotten sick and ill over the
Mhm.
years, because it is the whole like run as fast as you can. I can do this. I'm going to make it as amazing as possible and do all night.
Right.
And forget about, you know, wherever. I won't be at home for whenever, and I'll drink from my soup from a cup, and I'll just figure it out till I get my deadline. And so I don't even know how to physically walk back that.
because it's
Excitement.
like, yes, of course, you absolutely can do those things, but then kind of going to that place, or I guess this is us posing the question to you, like, where do you, like, is that something that you want, or
do you have a strategy when you're getting excited about something that you're like, okay, I know this is going to be a future thing, or this doesn't fall into, like, how do you reel in the worlds can be everything?
Okay, so how I reel it in is just knowing I can't do everything. Like,
right.
that is just that. Absolutely, I'll be like, I want to do this tomorrow, I'm gonna do this tomorrow, I'm gonna do that, and then I'm like, Erika, you cannot do all of those things.
Right.
You have to kind of I found that I have to prioritize. So every single night, I write down a list, and it's 5 things. I didn't do a 10 thing list, because if I did 10, I wrote down 10, 5 of them wouldn't get done. So I write down 5 things that is absolutely imperative that I do the very next day. And that is how I kind of can put things away. Like, if I wrote down those 5 things, the other 1,002, they have to go somewhere. They have to chill out. I like to
do you have another
like, what do you do with those? I know that headspace.
Yeah, but this is gonna sound so funny, but I like to think of my brain as like a waiting room sometimes, and there is a couch, and so all of those other things have to go sit on the couch while I focus on the things that are really important that I do. And so the patterns is something that has just been in the waiting room, just sitting there chilling for like probably about 2-3 years. And I know I have to get to it one day. But it's also important to me that I don't let something just sit forever, because we can also kind of do that, especially if we're afraid. We can let it just sit there, and then we realize we never even got around to it. But I really make my 5-thing list, and if I get to those things, I feel really happy. And if I don't, oh well, I just didn't get to them that day.
Yeah. Do they say ones you don't make it on your next day's 5, or do you evaluate and be like, they go away?
It depends. If so like I'm doing this thing now to where I'm trying to, because it's very hard to make products, make new products. So if I have a set like 10 things I need to make one day, and then I have an idea the night before, and I'm like, well, what if I, make this thing? I can't. I sometimes you do want to stop, the thing that's really important that you need to do. But I know I can't do that. And so I make my 5. And if I do not get to one of them, maybe it'll go on the next day, or maybe I'll like squeeze everything in and just try to, get everything done. But it really depends on a day-to-day basis. And if something is like extremely important, then I do. I don't know if I answered that question at all, but
no, I like it.
But you know what I mean? You have to kind of see like what is most important, but also get to the things that might not be so important, but that you really, really want to do one day. And so that is like where I am right now, and kind of why I took a little bit of a break from Instagram so I can do those things that I've really been wanting to do. And so I've been like making all these new patterns and just, trying to figure out like, and then also I try to like test my products out because I don't want to just throw them out there. And so I've been kind of like wearing new bags and just seeing if I like the way it feels, if it sits right on your shoulder, all that stuff. So it sometimes I don't like to be too hard on myself every single day. Some days I'm like, Erika, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, you didn't do this. But every single day you have to like, and we were talking about this the other day, you have to give yourself grace.
Yeah, absolutely.
And understand that you cannot do it all.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us about like the designs that you do have or that you make often, and like how many, when you do like this is your production day, and how long does it take to do each bag or that kind of process?
And do you do things like batch it out? I mean, where you're like, okay, I'm gonna spend today and tomorrow, or even this week. Okay, I'm gonna cut this week. I'm gonna cut fabric. Then I'm gonna fold, like flip them inside out today. Or like, tell us what that might look like, because you probably don't go start to finish.
That makes sense. See, I'm not a
on one bag every, So yeah, tell us about that a little bit.
Okay, yeah. I do assembly line style kind of sewing. And so, okay, so let's say that I get an order for a specific bag, but I'm doing like a batch of another bag. I'd like to finish that batch because it was the thing that I had sitting on my table and at my machine. So I like to finish that. But it really depends, like, what I'm making. So like we mentioned the Scentsy. If I'm making a Scentsy, that is like, I have to just focus on that. I cannot have anything else going on because we have so many pieces. We have pockets. We have the flaps that the lace goes through. The lace is like the drawstring piece. And then you have all of the interior pockets. So you have so many different pieces and you don't want to lose anything, because the worst thing in the world is when you're almost done with a bag and you flip it right side out and you realize that you forgot something, or you realize you didn't count right and something is missing from this bag. So you have to go back. And you have to either, now lately, I do not have the time to seam rip. And also it kind of messes up the quality of the product. Sure. So you just have like this thing that nobody can ever use. And sometimes I do like to just scrap it for parts. So I'll like, maybe if I'm doing like my scrap bags or something like that with my remnants, I'll, sew it into something. But it really just depends. And those Scentsy takes a long time to make just because of all the different parts. And so I just try to make as many of those as I possibly can in a certain amount of time. But we're talking about maybe 2 days worth of cutting, depends on like how many you're making. Another day for like sewing everything. another 2 days for, actually putting pockets on the front panels. And so it's a process. And
what's a batch? How many is like in a batch of like those? Like 6, 10?
maybe 20. Yeah, my last I did like a Cincy surprise update, and so that one I did 20 because it was like 60 bags. And so I like to, but yeah, if you can, some days I'm like in my machine just like, what am I doing? Like, this is so much, when you start like, you're like, what did I do? And you have like this real like life crisis, because you're like, what in the world? Like, it's so many different pieces. I really love doing this, but I'm kind of overwhelmed. And so during those times where I'm like I'm making a whole batch of something, and I know I have to get it out, I'll sometimes, like, this is not often, but I'll sometimes be like, make you something. Make yourself a bag. In this time where I'm really overwhelmed with all of these, 50, 60 bags, I'll like make you a pouch, make you something. And then, I'll make myself that thing, and I'll go back to work. But it is very time consuming. Like, yeah. I woke up at 7 today, and I finished work at 6. So we could do this. And so, yeah, I was in my studio shed for hours, almost 12 hours.
Mm. Yeah. And you give yourself like, okay, I've done production days. Like, do you give your day selves like, okay, well, I got to give my body a break from production?
But then you get like, you got customers, and so you like, you're in the back of your mind, you like, wait a minute, I'm gonna get an email, somebody's mad at me, and so you keep going. And that's not the best thing to do, but it is the thing that I do. I'm like, I don't care if my wrist is, because I've had wrist issues, like really bad wrist issues lately, and at one point I may need surgery on my wrist, because there are days where, I just can't move it at all. And I still just like work, Yeah. And you just have to do that. You just have to. And I know that's like the most horrible thing to say, that you just have to do something. Right. But I chose to do this, and I really do still enjoy it. I have a love for P&G. But after I finished all of those bags recently, I said, I'm taking a break.
Yeah.
I'm taking a break from Instagram. I love Instagram. It is amazing. But I'm taking a break so I can get myself together. And that's what I've kind of just been doing. And I've been working slow, and just realizing that this is a beautiful process. Like, you taking a piece of fabric and you're making it into this 3-dimensional, usable item. Take your time. If you're going to have an update, which I have one, shameless plug, I have one this Sunday.
Awesome.
I have one this Sunday. And those bags I took my time on, and and they're ready to ship. So I'm really excited about those. But yeah, it's a long process.
Ahead of time before a release, and then you also do to order.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sometimes it depends. Yeah, I can't make any extras. I don't want. Once I'm like done, I'm like, okay, we're just gonna put this off to the side. And I love when people like just reach out and they're like, "Are you gonna make this again?" And I maybe had like no intention on making it again, but if you email me and you ask, I'm like, yes, I love that. I love when people are just like, will you make that again? I'm like, yes, I will make as many as you want. If it's 1, I'll make it. If it's 20, I'll make it. Like, don't ever be afraid to like reach out to me. And yeah, I love that. I love custom orders and stuff like that.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Excellent. And when you are taking a break, tell us a little bit about what that looks like. Like, because making is such a huge part of that is your life. Mm-hmm. So then I can't imagine that you probably go without making anything at all. So like, what does relaxing and recharging look like for you? Are you cooking? Are you watching movies? Are you listening to books? Are you just staying horizontal? Like, what is it like to you?
Oh my goodness. So I have just started quilting. And that has been my thing lately. Just taking it's kind of like making a bag, but you just, it's one just huge piece that you end up making. And that has been it is like the most therapeutic kind of making I have ever come across, because you can just sit there and just sew. Like, you don't have to really think about it. You can just sit there and sew. So yes, my quilt, I'm really excited. I don't know when I'll finish it. It's the Rose and Rose quilt from Pearl Soho, and it is a free pattern if anybody wants to try it and just share with me with your progress, because I would love to see, you know, other people's quilts. But that, and then recently I've just been obsessed with like film and TV, and I know it's like, you watch yes, I love TV, like, and they have been making some top-notch television lately, and I'm just like floored, because I'm like,
yeah, tell us what you're into.
So I just finished, me and my dad, we love to watch TV together, so we just finished Foundation, and it's on Apple TV Plus, and it is such a good show. I really don't know how to summarize it. It is a sci-fi TV show, but it is so good. And it really makes you think about family and how important, you know, people are in your life. And it's just a really good show.
I got for a second, and my husband couldn't get into it, and I'm gonna do it without him.
Yes, you have the end. Yes, you have to watch it to the end, because it's a good show. It's a really good show. What else have I been watching? I made a little list. Let me just look at it.
Oh, good.
Yellow Jackets on Showtime.
Oh, I've heard about that.
Yes. Like, every episode, you're like, what did I just watch? But it's so good. It's so good, because you're like ready to like see what's gonna happen next. But then, and I also like love that some network, I guess you would call them networks or subscriptions, or I don't know what you really call them, because we have like Netflix, and then we have, you know, Showtime. They release it every single week, and so I love that we can't really binge it. Yeah, because sometimes when you binge stuff, it just it's like right up
on, right? Sure. Remember the years when we used to watch Lost
every and then every week you had to be like, okay, what happened, and then you have to wait until the next week, and sometimes you forget. But if a show is really, really good, you don't. And it sticks with you all week. You talk to everybody you come across about it. And Yellow Jackets was one of those shows where I was like, I cannot wait until next Sunday. And who is ever ready for Sunday? Like, the Sunday scaries are a real thing.
So bad.
Nobody's ever looking forward to Sunday. But I love these TV shows, because they're just so good. So Yellow Jackets, I have one more. It's called Station 11. And it's on HBO.
I've been meaning to read the book.
Yes. I know if I tried to read the book, I wouldn't be able to understand anything. It is deep. Okay. Like, I just would be like confused, I feel like. Yeah.
What is it about?
Is it pandemic related?
Yes, it is. And it's so funny. Like, all these pandemic shows have been coming out, and you're like, this is too soon. Soon. And then I was watching Grey's Anatomy. I'm going to go back to Station 11. But I was watching Grey's Anatomy the other day. And they, like, had a pandemic. They had COVID. And then now it's gone. So everybody is just, like, nothing. You know, it never really happened. And everybody's just, like, so happy. And I'm like, we're still going through this. Like, you know, give us a minute. Like, we can't do this right now. Because they're, like, having fun. And I'm like...
No. So, We haven't gotten to the fun part.
If we don't get
yeah, right.
Sorry,
but yeah, Station 11. I would kind of summarize it as just like a post-pandemic like era TV show where they're kind of just trying to deal with everything that happened, and we're talking about 20 years later. And the pandemic that they had, it was like taking people out like immediately. So there was no like, it wasn't, you know, like a long time period. It was horrific. But once you really get into the show, it is just so sweet. Like the relationships between people. And there are some things where you're like, wow, like the author of this just really was just thinking, but it's a really good TV show. And I really enjoyed it. Do you want to hear my other TV show, my last one?
Yes.
Okay. Yellowstone. Yellowstone. I did not think that I would like anything about Yellowstone just because I've never really watched Westerns, or I don't know anything about ranches or anything like that, but it is such a good show.
Isn't it? Okay. It's got drama.
Yes.
First Nation. It's got the gorgeous places, and it's just so creative. All the different stories that they put in with it. I love it. Where it feels like they actually have real things. They talk about issues that we really don't all talk about, that probably should be talking about. And did you start, because we have been dying to watch more Yellowstone, that we did the 1883?
Yes.
Starting that?
Yes. I just, the finale came on Sunday, and yes. It is, okay, so it is very different from Yellowstone, but it's still good. Like, it's different, but it's good. And the I don't know, the showrunner for Yellowstone in 1883, he has another show called Mayor of Kingstown.
Yeah. Oh, that's okay. Yep.
Yeah. So that, and then you want the kicker? He has another show coming out, and it's like 1934 or something, I believe it's called. So it's like in between 1883 and Yellowstone, and it's still about the same family.
Really? Ooh.
Yes, and so that's coming out at some point. And so I'll probably watch it because I love TV, and and it's just a really good show. Excuse me, this thing is shaking. But yes, I just love TV, and the good thing about TV is that it also has scores, and I'm obsessed with film scores. And so I've just been like, the foundation score, the opening title theme score is fantastic. It's fantastic, and I can listen to it over and over and over again. So that kind of like ties back into like what I do during my downtime. I love listening to film scores, and just music in general. Yes. But there has been some fantastic scores coming out of television, and I can't wait for the Emmys.
Do you listen to them while you work? We had I just did while I was knitting this sweater, I just went back and watched my classics of Lord of the Rings and do that all over again. And my sister did. She'd do the scores, and she'd make epic soundtracks, and she'd mix up all these other ones. And so we would listen to that while we work, and people were like, "You guys watching movies back there?" But it was always like fun to be like, especially when it's production style or like boxing pies and stuff like that. And you would, your mind could kind of just go off into those lands that you love.
And you think about like the exact moment when they were playing that in the movie, or whether it was like the opening scene or wherever it was. Yeah, you start thinking about it, and you get kind of emotional, and you're like, wow. And one show that really did that for me was the Queen's Gambit score, like the most popular score from the show. And it, like, you really, when you're listening to it, you're like thinking about the whole story and, just everything. And it's just, I love it. I love it so much. Yeah.
Oh, that's a good point. I did love that series, and I forgot about the music. I'll have to go back and listen to that.
I know it came out at an interesting time. I think we were all just going through a lot, and it was like we watched it, but we didn't get to take it in, digest it, maybe like we would have at another time. And so yes, it was really good though.
Yes, absolutely.
So you've got everything ready for your Sunday already. What do you do?
Do you want to show? Yeah, and do you
oh my goodness, if I thought
it could give people a little sneak peek.
Okay, so I was gonna run back because if anybody wanted to know, I have my studio is a shed in my backyard, and so I was like, I'm gonna run and get these bags, but then it started like raining really, really bad, and and I just didn't want to like make the trek. But they are the Hamilton bag. If anybody knows what that looks like, it is a drawstring bag with just like a handle. One like handle goes around your wrist, and I love the bag, and everyone else seems to love it a lot. And I'll have those in wax canvas and regular duck cotton canvas, which is really nice, and I'm really excited about it.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And so it's just it's not a huge, big update. No Cincy's or anything, but yeah.
Well, and we thought maybe could we tell people that Erika has an order that she's been working on for us. And so stay tuned.
I brought my Cincy.
So this is one of the bags.
Yeah. It's like I wish I was like further away, but it's my favorite thing ever. Like, it seriously is the funnest bag of all time. I have my little project in there.
I love that there's a key ring on the inside.
Yeah, it's for hold on. It's for just like if you like you want like yarn guide, yeah, that's what that's for. But I'm super excited about your order, and I cannot wait to get it to you. And I'm just so appreciative of you both.
I'm so excited. I'm still blown away, and I apologize to sewers, but like that looks like something that like machines and lots of people need to do. Besides, one person can make this gorgeous bag.
It's brilliant. I mean, it's
Thank you.
I look at the stitching and I know that like,
it's
I mean,
a lot.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. The quality, and just like I love this bag so much because it's just so classic.
Yes.
Like it just the colors, the feeling, the texture. And that was one thing that we wanted to ask you about. Like, we talked about this, you and I talked about this on Tuesday, but just kind of, okay, so one of the pieces, side note, Eric and I just got into talking about sustainability and just like, okay, how do you grow businesses and scale them in a way? And if you are being mindful and meaningful about who you work with, what does that look like to you for like sourcing things, and how do you vet your businesses and just sort of like,
I mean, that seems like, to me, that even just seems like a lot of
that's
time.
a huge part of your work.
Like you would have to stop doing making for a long time, or have done so much research. Kind of, do you work on that all the time, or was it kind of like before I got started?
Oh yeah, it's a constant like, okay, I want to do this. How do I do it? What materials do I need? And then me and my laptop are besties at this particular point, because I'm always like researching. And one of you mentioned, how do I vet where I get my supplies or my materials. I love supporting family owned businesses, small businesses. And so that is where I really, and during like the last maybe month and a half, especially around the Christmas holiday, I had a hard time getting supplies, because the people that I were, getting my supplies from had a hard time getting raw materials, had a hard time getting all of the things that they needed to send me my order. But it was really important to me that I didn't rush them, because, I like to take my time when I'm making things. And so it's just really important to me that I support other small businesses. Like, point, like that is it. Now sometimes I can't stand I have to do this, but sometimes like if I really need something and it's like I need to have it that day, the next day, or whatever, I'll get a small quantity of things from like Amazon, but that is not anything that I do on a regular basis, because that is a mega corporation, and we won't get into that. But I really try to support all of the small businesses. And if anybody ever wants, and I really should make a blog post of all, I have no problem sharing where I get my supplies from. I can make lists of where I get my leather, all of my materials, because when you support these people, you're sending their kids to college, you're making sure they have food on their tables, and that is just, that makes me happy. I don't care if I am, because you always can, lower your costs by shopping somewhere else.
Of course.
But that's not what I want to do. And I've always liked the way that I did things. And it's taken, like, this wasn't like a something I just started like right off the bat doing. Right. It took time to research these places, and kind of build a relationship with them. And then now when you do have those relationships, they know you, they know your business, and it's just really exciting. And I never thought that when I started, I would, be able to call, a leather store in Montana and, be like, hey, like, this is Erika again. Can I order this and this and this? And they're like, yeah, Erika. And they have your address and your card and all that on file. And it feels like a family of people supporting each other. And that's just really important.
And it feels like more than ever. I mean, we've talked about this all the time. We talk about it we talk about it with our customers that walk in the store. Like, it just feels like more and more and more. That's all we ever want to do is just like, I mean, sure, sometimes would it be nice for tasks to be production style? Of course, but like, but what is the point? What is the point of doing this if it isn't about making connections and having, like, when you connect to other people, they see you see them. It's that's all anybody, especially since pandemic has started, like that's all anybody wants, like to be seen, to be heard, to be thought of.
And I was thinking too, when you're mentioning, you know, having a blog where it lists, you know, your vendors, people that you're working with, I just kind of seeing it as this way that even people going to your website and being like, oh, I could get leather here. And how it just kind of spirals out where everyone just starts that interconnecting and all doing that with our making, that we're giving shout outs to the other pieces. So it's easier to find all of these people, and it's easier to use these family owned small businesses versus what is already right now easier, which is corporate things or what's the first top on the ad in Google. Kind of things, you know. So that would be cool if it became easier because we were all more doing it and connecting more and doing the other things humans already want to do. Connect and hear each other more.
Exactly.
Yes. I'm so excited.
Me too. It's definitely something I will be doing. I just need the time. Like I spend a lot of time at a machine, and a lot. And if I could spend like half of that time, the things that I would do. There are so many things that I would just love to do. I would love to teach, you know, children how to sew, because it is like we don't think of sewing as like a thing that you really need to know how to do, but it's a really good like tool to have. When your pants need to be hemmed, you know, a day before an event, or, you know, you got a hole, because here's the thing, instead of you buying something new, you can just mend what you have. And so, and that's what I do with a lot of my things. I'm like, oh, hole, taking it to the shop, and
that's how we used to, or that's how people used to do it.
Yes, they didn't just go buy new ones.
No, I mean, like, taught in schools as curriculum, and then, I mean, our parents knew how to do things because they learned it in school, and then would mend things, and it wasn't required for us. And I'll tell you,
even mom, you know, our mom, she even still has like a mending pile.
I have a pile. I say
you have a pile.
I know.
We all have a pile of stuff we need fixed.
It's kind of out of control, but
and I think that is such an important thing. And like you said, we've been talking about wanting to do stuff with the kids and things like that, because it is so great to like spread on this making joy and the other piece that it does for our brains, and
self-sufficiency, feeling like that confidence booster that you can like you can sew on a button. It isn't a thing. It's not hard, right? But just like, and I think you could teach, I mean, 6-year-olds can do that. And what else can you do after that?
And there's the same thing too that is kind of hard, that you're like, if I had some help to do this piece, then I could do this. But then you get to the point where you're like, but then I'm doing this and now I miss that. And is this kind of cycle hard? It's that you're torn constantly on which thing you want to do the most, which I guess is a good thing, that you're inspired and excited. And
oh yeah, I'm always like, every night I'm like with my sketch pad, I'm like, okay, make this, because that's the thing, like I have hundreds of sketches and ideas and things, but a lot of the time I can't bring them to life because of, you know, money, or, you know, it's a multitude of things. And I'm sure you know about, like, you know, you want to do something, but it's just not within reach quite yet.
Absolutely.
So that is just, it's so many things that I would love to do. It's just about stepping and doing it.
What if, you know, something that it's an interesting thought, but like, and maybe I mean, especially when you get together with your friends who are creative, or at least coming up with, like, I'm a part of a small group of women here that, like, we just get together and, like, it's like a drawing class, and I don't, or we do like an art project, something that is like, so it could be mixed media or painting or whatever. And that's not very comfortable for me, because I would never say that I was a visual artist in any sort of form. But what if there was, like, okay, you got together once a month with your maker friends, like say, I'm just thinking specifically, like, okay, well, if like Tony, and you're like, okay, on the 4th Thursday of the month,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to spend this one day. It's like almost like having a retreat where maybe it was one day, maybe it was a weekend every 2 months or something, where you're just like, okay, all we do, we don't bring our projects that we've been working on. We only are just like, we're here to like start new stuff and brainstorm. And like, then you give yourself like, say, a weekend worth of creativity to just like release these ideas or sketch out some stuff or cut something new. And see if it can take off, because I guess I do feel like anybody who does production style work or doesn't allow themselves, not to say that like, oh, well, here's what you should do, because we completely understand like where do you come up with that time? But I guess it's one of those things like, well, maybe as like scheduling it and then allowing that to be totally open and just okay, that's because then creativity, then you don't feel like you're never able to pursue creativity.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I like that.
That's a great idea, because it'll give you time to, like you said, think about those things that you've been wanting to do, but you just feel like you don't have the time to do it. Because let's be honest, you can make the time for the things that you really want to do.
Sure.
But it's guilt that kind of keeps you from doing that. Yeah, it's the guilt.
So right.
Yeah, and so you're like, okay, but I feel like if you're around other people and they're doing the exact same thing and they're not feeling guilty, that would be really helpful for me. Just to have, other people being like, okay, this was my new idea. This was my new idea. And you can get feedback right there too, which is, would be awesome. And I also was thinking about the conversation we had the other day about me not finishing any of my knitting projects. And I was thinking about how if you had like a night like one of those where, maybe you have some knitters and they can help you finish your project, but then you have somebody that may wants to hem some pants and I can help them hem the pants and they can help me finish my project. And, just a collective of creatives coming together, trying to figure out, how can we do this?
We can add that. And I think that as we are now getting to a place, we're not quite there yet, but we're getting to a place where people are kind of crawling out of, and I don't mean it to seem like crawl, but basically we're kind of, we're in a transitioning re-entry point where it's getting safer to gather and absolutely. And I mean, I think that's one of the things that people have missed, the community of people, communion, just getting together and creating. And so I think that
I like that idea, because it's not like, let's get together for dinner, let's get together for coffee, but it's like, let's get together and like actually like
bring
an idea or spitball an idea.
Like a brainstorming kind of collective. That's such a good idea. If you make it happen, I'll drive the 8 hours.
Let's do
it. I think I'm probably about 8 hours from
Grand Rapids or something.
Yeah,
let's just go get a bunch of people and go somewhere.
And this is what people do. I mean, that's what Squam is. That's what, I mean, there have been retreats like this for a long period of time. It's just that it's not always, it's not necessarily something that we make time to do. And certainly it hasn't been in people's comfort level to do that. So,
yes.
Awesome. But before we get cut off, I don't want to we could just talk to you forever.
I know, I could too, because I'm like, like when somebody suggests something, you're just sitting there like, yeah, I could do that. That's a really good idea. And you're like trying to see how you can make it happen or see if it's like something that's possible. And so, yes, I could talk to you both forever.
Well, come visit us soon.
Definitely.
And we'll be talking soon. And just everybody keep your eyes peeled, because we're going to have Erika's
some lovely
bags
stuff
in the shop really soon.
I'm so excited. Thank you so much. Bye. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye.